Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and certainly glad to have another opportunity to speak to the budget. Mr. Speaker, a couple of things beforehand. First of all, I just want to say there was a petition earlier today brought forward by the member, my colleague from Mount Pearl North, on recall legislation. And just for the record, I want to say I do support what he's saying there, and I really think we should be moving forward with that. Second point, Mr. Speaker, I want to address an issue that came up today, and I want to commend the Minister for Advanced Education and Labour, I think is the department, today for that announcement on job coaches for supported employment. Something that's long overdue, certainly in our area, Visions Employment. I've had conversations, I know my colleague from Mount Pearl North has as well, about the concerns around the low wages for job coaches and the difficulty in recruiting and retaining job coaches. This is going to go a long way, I believe, in helping with that and in providing meaningful employment opportunities for persons with intellectual disabilities in not just my community, but certainly throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. So, Minister, good job on that. I'm glad to see you're listening on that issue, and I support that announcement. Sticking to advanced education and skills, because I just want to throw a few things out here, just for the record, I guess. On the CNA issue, I would just say that I would agree with the position that's been taken, really, that if we have courses or programs and so on, and we have low or zero enrollment, it makes no sense to continue on. So, nobody wants to see any programs cut or courses cut, I'm sure, but we simply cannot afford as a province to be offering courses for one or two people. So, again, I would concur with that decision by the Minister of Advanced Education. And the last point I'll make in that department, in terms of MUN, while it's unfortunate that we've seen such a public spat, if you will, back and forth with Memorial University, again I would have to concur that Memorial University is receiving significant subsidy from the taxpayers of Newfoundland and Labrador, and they should be held accountable. And there should be more openness and transparency as to where our tax dollars are going. And they should be looking from within to find savings before they start putting it on the backs of students and so on. So, again, I would, just for the record, just say I do agree with that. Now, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the budget, and I've said this before when I have spoken, there were some good news announcements in the budget. There were some good things there, and I will certainly acknowledge the good things that were there. There was some money for transition houses, student assistance, childcare subsidy increases for low-income families, legal advice for victims of sexual assault, there were some investments in mental health and so on. Those were good things. I support those initiatives, and I commend the government for bringing those initiatives forward. That being said, as has been said now numerous times, the big issue is the taxation. That is the big issue. It's all the taxation. And we can't pretend that Budget 2016 didn't happen. We wish we could pretend it didn't happen. I'm sure there's an awful lot of people in Newfoundland and Labrador wish that Budget 2016 actually didn't happen, because they were hit very substantially by all these increased taxes. And everybody knows that. And the members opposite know it. They've all gotten up themselves and said, that this was difficult decisions. And I know it was difficult decisions. And they didn't like what they did and what they felt they had to do. And I'm sure they didn't. But the fact of the matter is that I think where both sides of the House disagree is on the degree to which it was done. I don't think anybody over here is going to be naive enough. I don't think we will. I know I'm not. I don't think any of my other colleagues are, to say that we would have done nothing. We would have just said status quo, we're not going to raise any additional revenues. Nobody in their right mind would say that, I don't think, if we're being realistic about our situation. But it was a matter of degrees. It was a matter of how far it was taken, and it was a matter of how that impacted the everyday person. Now, there are certainly some people who can absorb it more so than other people could absorb it, and it impacted people in different ways. There's no doubt about that. For some people who are struggling as it is to keep the lights on in their home and to heat their home, and there's people going to food banks and everything else, for those people it was devastating. And we've seen increased food bank use. That's a fact. That's been put out there by the Food Sharing Association and so on. They've seen increased food bank use. And that's for the people who were already on the edge or even over the edge to some degree, who this here just hurt them even more. And we've seen no relief from that in this budget. We also know there were people that perhaps could suck it up for a better term, but it is still hurting them financially. They've had to make, we've seen bankruptcies have gone up in this province, and we continue to hear from, from industry that housing starts are down and home repairs are down, the vehicle sales are down and so on. And that's because people's expendable income was taken away, much of it. Some people, all their expendable income was taken. Other people, a large portion of their expendable income was taken. And that's only going to result in issues in terms of businesses trying to survive, whether it be in the construction industry or whether it be in the retail or whether it be in the service industry and bars and restaurants and so on. And I've talked to people who were in that industry who told me that businesses dropped off significantly as a result of those cuts. And unfortunately, none of them were reversed. So it's fine to say there's no new taxes and fees, but if you raised everything last year to, one could argue, an unsustainable level for many people, and then this year you did nothing to change that, then this is just a continuation of what you've done. And that's what people are upset about. That's what I think the official opposition and the third party and I am objecting to. That's why we can't support the budget. And that's not to say that everything in the budget is bad, because it's not. And there's some investments there in crown lands for municipalities and crown lands for farming and all that. Those are all good initiatives. Nobody's going to argue any of those things. I don't think they are. But the fact of the matter is, the core issue is the taxes. That's the core issue. Now, that said, again, I will commend government. Again, I will commend government on taking some actions, maybe small actions, but still actions. I heard the Minister of Health, Community Services, I think is the name, Health Community Services, talking about the fact we had people with blackberries who had no reason to use blackberries. We had landlines that nobody used and all those types of things. Going through that exercise of, they're referring it to as zero-based budgeting, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. Should have been doing it forever. Should have been doing it forever. Absolutely, we should have been doing it, and it makes sense. And I support it. I'm sure that most members over here support it too. I think they do. I think they do. And because it only makes good common sense. So nobody's going to argue that, I don't think. And some of the other things that were done, looking at the management structures and so on and trying to find efficiencies, nobody wanted to see anyone lose their job, but at the end of the day, examining it and finding ways to do things in a more efficient way, I think the general public would argue that that was something that needed to be done as well. Even though it wasn't, obviously, for those who were impacted, not a good thing. But I don't think anyone would argue, in general, that going through that exercise to streamline things and make things more efficient is a good idea. Now, with that said, as long as it's done properly and fairly. Now, the fact that you get rid of somebody at a deputy minister's level or whatever, you get rid of, say, 6, but then you replace and you sneak in 3 of your friends and former candidates. No, that's not good. That's not good. People do object to that. I can guarantee you people object to that. And everyone would, not saying that it's never been done. I'm not suggesting that this is something new, because we all know those types of things have gone on for years and years and years. But the big difference is that this government said we weren't going to do it. We're taking the politics out of a point that they weren't going to do it. They were going to change things. So when it happened, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. But the fact that they're going through the exercise and finding savings, that part, that's a good thing. And I think, once again, people will support it in general. But, you know, again, what we got to get down to here, we got to keep thinking about the ordinary person. The ordinary person who has to try to work and live, pay taxes and pay their bills and so on, and the impact that the taxation has had on them. And it's not just, because if you think about it, it's not just this taxation. We've had, you got to remember, people got hit with all these taxes. Now they just got hit with 9%, and that's got nothing to do with Muskrat Falls, but that's 9% going on their light bill on top of that. Plus, if you talk to anybody, I don't know if anybody has talked to constituents or heard from constituents about insurance costs. I certainly have. It's not just taxi industry either. I've after getting several messages from people who said when they went to renew their insurance and so on, and they've been driving for, 30 years and have no tickets, no accidents, whatever, but yet their insurance rates just like went right through the roof overnight. Nobody can seem to understand why or get an explanation why, but it's after happening nonetheless. So on top of all the taxes, now you got 9% coming on your light bill. Then you got all these insurance increases. Insurance is going up to the roof. And no doubt, I suggest that pretty soon the banks are going to be standing in line with their hand up looking for their turn. Just wait and see. At some point in time, we're going to start raising more costs now to use the ATM machines, everything else, the service charges, everything else, because they got to get their profits too. And it's only a matter of time, their turn is coming. And we know as the cost of everything goes up, in terms of fuel and HST and everything else, then businesses are going to start passing that on. So the price of groceries are going to be going up. And the prices of other goods and services are going to go up. Everything is going up except paychecks. It's the only thing that's not going up. It's the only thing that's not going up. And of course, we look at civil service now, and they're in the contract negotiations. And chances are, I don't know what's happening there, but it's not looking too good for them to get any increase. And usually then the private sector starts to follow suit as well. They're saying, boy, we're in tough times and whatever, so we can't afford to give our employees a raise either. So cost of living is going up, cost of goods and services are going up, the light bill is going up, all the taxes are up, the insurance is going through the roof, banks are standing in line, they want to get their piece of the pie. Everything is going up except the paychecks. Now, how are people supposed to absorb it? How are they supposed to survive? That's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question, right? How are people supposed to survive? How is the average person supposed to survive? They're finding it extremely difficult now, and it's getting worse. And somehow, we got to come together and start trying to mitigate some of this stuff. We really do. We got people going bankrupt, we got more people going to food banks, and we're getting people moving out of the province. And when we, sometimes you hear about people are moving out of the province, and you hear about that, and you say, nah, that's just people saying that. There's nobody really going to move. But I can tell you, I've after getting a number of emails and messages from people who are actually gone. People that are gone. They are gone to the mainland. And other people that are packing up and leaving. They're in the process of getting their homes up for sale and everything else. They're getting out of here. They're getting out of Dodge. They really are. And the more people that leave, the more our population dwindles, there's less people to pay taxes, which means now the rest of us got more to pay. So, like, it's a vicious cycle we're into. It's a vicious cycle we're into, and we got to really start to look at ways to start mitigating this. Insurance would be a good start. I think I heard the Minister of Service now talk about they're going to be looking at the insurance system. I hope they do. I hope to God they do. I think we need to take a serious look at the insurance system. Maybe we need to start. I think the former administration at one time, many years ago, talked about getting rid of this, putting a cap on soft tissue injuries, and then it kind of died on the vine. I think perhaps the legal community got all upset and started lobbying and that because they wanted to be able to, sue people and so on. That was good business for them. But I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But it's time to have a look again, to start moving to a new system of insurance to try to get the rates down, because that's another big burden on the average person. And we got to start thinking in terms of the average person and their survival. It's fine to look at a budget, fine to look at a balance sheet, fine to look at the lenders and those institutions and so on, bond rating agencies. All that's good. I mean, government has to do that. Without doubt, they have to do that. But somewhere in that balancing act, they've got to also look at the financial well-being of the people of the province, the people that we're supposed to all be here to serve, and particularly the most vulnerable amongst us, like our seniors as an example. I mean, you look at the seniors, not only are they getting hit with all these increases that I've just talked about, but then they were hit with other things as well. They were hit with other things. Yes, the member is talking about the seniors discount, the enhanced benefits. Yeah, that was a good thing. For the very lowest end of the seniors, yes, they got a little increase. Wasn't a big increase because you took away the home heat rebate and you already had a program. So, but it was an increase. It was a slight increase, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't come anywhere close to making up for all of the other things, like home care costs and all this kind of stuff. It was something else that went up. Non-prescription, over-the-counter drugs and stuff. So these are things that I think it's important that we have to realize. These are things that we have to work to try to mitigate against, because this is having an impact on the average, everyday person in Newfoundland and Labrador, and particularly our most vulnerable. The last thing I want to just talk about, I got a couple of minutes, is the 3 Ps, public-private partnerships, and the 3 Ps that are being proposed for long-term care and Cornerbrook Hospital and possibly HMP and Waterford and so on at some point if they continue to go down that road. And I'm not against it in principle. I'm not against it in principle. As long as, for bricks and mortar, I don't agree with privatizing the services, but in terms of the bricks and mortar, in principle, I'm not against it. The only part, though, is that as it was proposed, unless I'm missing something, to my recollection, it said that you would look at the options. You would look at traditional option, and then you would look at the 3P option. You would weigh both options, and you would go with what option made the most sense. And that's fine. But the part that's missing is that you said that those options, that information on those options would be presented to the public before you made the decision to be able to demonstrate that this is the right option. But I haven't seen that part. It seems like the decision is made. We're going ahead with the 3P model, but the part about presenting it to the public, demonstrating to the public, this is option A, this is option B, this is why we're doing it, here's our justification. I haven't seen any justification to the public, and that's something you said you were going to do that hasn't happened. So that's the biggest problem I have. It's almost like we got to take your word for it. We're going to take the word for it, and I'm not saying that, I'm not accusing anyone of, going to do anything that they would feel is not the best decision. I'm sure if they think it's the best decision, they're going to do it. But, you know, just because the Minister of Health and Community Services says, but we looked at Cornerbrook Hospital and long-term care, and I believe that the 3P is the way to go. That's the best option. That's better than the traditional option. Well, no offence to the Minister or the Cabinet or the Premier or anyone else, but that's not quite good enough, and that's not what was promised. We need justification. Show us the numbers. Show us the numbers. Answer the questions as to why this is the best option. And if it is the best option, and it can be demonstrated that it's the best option for bricks and mortar only, then I would have no problem supporting it if it could be shown. But it's kind of hard to support it when you don't know. Just take our word for it, that's the best option. And we know what's happened in the past. We know what's happened with Muskrat Falls project when people are saying, trust me, take our word for it, we're the experts. We know where that's gotten us. We know where that's gotten us. We got to be able to learn from our past, and that's a classic example of where trust us gets us. So I'd like to see those numbers net justification before we move forward with those projects. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please.